The prairie stretched wide and empty, a vast ocean of golden grass rolling beneath a September sky. Wind hissed through the fence posts and rattled the loose tin roof of the barn. John Carver stood alone at the edge of his neighbor's land, hat pressed against his chest, staring at the grave he had just finished digging. The cross was rough, 2 planks nailed together, the best he could do with trembling hands and the little daylight left. Beneath it lay Elias Turner, the man who had worked this land for nearly 3 decades, and the only neighbor John had known in 10 long years of solitude. John wiped the sweat from his brow, though the air was already cooling with evening. He wasn't a man who prayed much anymore, but he bowed his head out of respect. Elias had deserved that. "You worked hard, old friend," John muttered. His voice sounded strange in the stillness. "May the Lord grant you rest." He turned to leave, ready to retreat back to the silence of his own cabin, but a sound made him pause. The faint creak of a door, the whisper of footsteps. John frowned. He thought Elias had lived alone. That had been part of the man's sorrow. His wife long gone, no kin to speak of. At least, that's what John believed. Yet now, the door of the Turner cabin opened, and out stepped a young woman. She was tall, slender but strong, her hair the color of late summer wheat spilling around her shoulders. Behind her clustered 6 children of varying ages, some no more than toddlers, others nearly grown. Their eyes were wide, uncertain, and all fixed on him. John's stomach tightened. He had not expected this. The young woman descended the steps slowly, her gaze steady though her lips trembled. She stopped a few paces from him, her hands folded before her as if to keep them from shaking. "You're Mr. Carver, aren't you?" she asked. Her voice carried a quiet strength, though sorrow laced every word. "That's right," John said, his throat suddenly dry. "And you are?" "My name is Anna Turner," she said softly. "Elias was my father." She gestured to the children. "These are my brothers and sisters. Hannah, Ruth, Lydia, Samuel, Mary, and Thomas." The children nodded timidly, clinging closer to her skirts. John felt a weight settle on his chest. "I didn't know your father still had family here," he admitted. Anna's eyes flickered to the grave, then back to him. "We came back when he fell ill. He wouldn't speak of it to anyone. He was too proud. But we've been here these last months, caring for him." John shifted uneasily. He had seen smoke from the chimney, but he'd assumed Elias had hired a hand. He had kept his distance, as neighbors often did out here. Too much company could wear thin on lonely men. Now he regretted his silence. Anna's voice faltered, but she straightened her shoulders. "Now he's gone, Mr. Carver. And we—" She looked at the children, then drew a breath. "We have no one left." The prairie wind sighed around them, tugging strands of hair across her face. John studied her, seeing not only grief but determination in her eyes. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Then Anna stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "All 7 of us are now yours." The words struck him like a hammer. He blinked, his hat clutched tight in his hands. "Yours? Miss Turner, I don't reckon you understand. I'm a solitary man. I've no means to take in a family, let alone," he glanced at the children again. "7 of you." Her chin lifted, and for a moment she looked so much like Elias that John's throat ached. "I understand more than you think. The law will come for us if we can't hold this land. They'll scatter the little ones, send the boys to labor and the girls to strangers. I won't let that happen. Father always said you were a fair man, that you had honor. So I am asking you now, help us." The children's eyes, wide and shining in the dusk, turned to him as if he already held their fate in his hands. John turned away, staring at the dying light bleeding across the horizon. He had lived alone for years by choice. Solitude was safe. Solitude meant no one to lose, no hearts to break. He had buried his parents, his brother, even the woman he once thought he'd marry. The land had claimed them all. And now, 7 lives stood before him, fragile as glass, asking him to shoulder their world. He ran a hand across his jaw, rough with stubble. "Miss Turner, I ain't a savior. I barely scrape by myself." Anna's voice was quiet but unyielding. "Maybe so, but you're the only one left." Silence hung heavy. John looked at her again, the quiet fire in her eyes, the children clinging to her skirts. And he felt something stir deep within him, something he thought long buried. Responsibility, duty, maybe even hope. The sun slipped lower, painting the prairie in shades of fire. John swallowed hard, his voice low. Then, I reckon you'd better come inside. The Carver cabin, once so quiet, now breathed with life. The scrape of chairs, the shuffle of small boots on wooden planks, and the sound of children's laughter replaced the silence that had haunted John for years. That first night was a trial. The children curled together on blankets by the fire, whispering until sleep took them. Anna gave her shawl to little Mary, shivering against the cold. John lay awake on his narrow bed, staring at the low ceiling, his mind restless. His cabin had been built for one man, not for 7 more. He told himself it was temporary, just until Anna found another way. But deep down, he knew better. By morning, Anna was already at the stove, sleeves rolled, hair tied back, turning cornmeal into cakes while the children fetched water from the well. She moved with a surety that surprised him, as though she had always belonged there. "You didn't have to," John muttered, embarrassed by the smell of food filling his cabin. "I did," Anna replied simply. "They need strength. So do you." Day by day, the rhythm of the ranch began to change. John still rose before dawn, but now he found Peter, the eldest boy, following him to the barn, eager to learn how to handle rope and saddle. The younger girls gathered eggs and washed clothes by the creek. Little Thomas followed John everywhere, clutching the wooden horse his father had carved, asking questions about cattle and fences until John's patience wore thin, and then, unexpectedly, warmed. At first, John fought against the tide. He told himself he couldn't afford to care. Yet slowly he began to. He noticed the way Ruth hummed softly as she worked, filling the air with music. He noticed how Samuel, small but stubborn, dragged with twice his size for the fire. He noticed, most of all, how Anna's quiet determination never faltered, even when exhaustion lined her face. One evening, long after the children were asleep, John found her sitting on the porch, arms wrapped around herself against the chill. The moon cast silver across her hair. "You work too hard," he said gruffly, leaning against the post. She looked up, tired but smiling. "There's no other way." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the coyotes in the distance. Then Anna spoke softly. "When I said we were yours, I meant it, not as a burden, but as a promise. You gave us a chance when we had no one else." John's throat tightened. "Anna, you don't belong to me. You're strong enough to stand on your own." He paused, glancing at the glow of the hearth inside. "But if you're a skin, whether you and those little ones got a place here, then yes, you do." Her eyes glistened, and for the first time since Elias's death, he saw her shoulders ease. Winter tested them hard. Snow came early, pressing heavy against the roof, freezing the creek, and driving wolves closer to the herds. Food ran low, and the firewood dwindled. But together they endured. Peter worked the cattle like a man twice his age. The girls stitched blankets from scraps. Anna baked bread from the last of the flour, her hands raw from work but steady. There were nights John feared they wouldn't make it. But each morning, he found the children's laughter still alive, the ranch still standing, and Anna still at his side. And something changed in him. The silence he had once prized now seemed unbearable without their voices. When spring finally broke, the prairie bloomed again. The herd was strong, the fences mended, and the cabin no longer felt like a tomb of solitude. It felt like home. One evening, John and Anna stood at the edge of the field, watching the children chase each other through the tall grass, their laughter rising with the breeze. "They're happy," Anna said softly. John nodded. "They are, and so am I." She turned, her blue eyes steady on his. "You've given us more than shelter. You've given us a family again." John drew a long breath. For a moment he was silent, searching for words. Finally he spoke, voice rough but sure. "Anna, when you whispered that all 7 of you were mine, I didn't understand then, but now I do. And if you'll allow it, I'd like to belong to you too." For a heartbeat, she only stared. Then a slow smile spread across her face, brighter than the setting sun. The children's laughter echoed across the field, and John Carver knew his years of loneliness were gone. He had not just taken in a family, he had found one. Under the vast sky of the frontier, where graves and storms marked every man's life, John had finally discovered what it meant to live not for himself, but for others. And so, the words spoken in sorrow became a vow of love, binding them all together. All 7 of us are now yours.